Welcome to the Philosophical Odysseys podcast. If you were scanned, vaporized, and perfectly rebuilt on the moon, would the person stepping out of that machine actually be you, or just a ghost walking around wearing your memories? You, the listener, are stepping into a custom-tailored journey of the mind today, and we're going to push your intuitions about reality right to the breaking point.
We really are. I mean, we're going to take some of our most basic assumptions and just completely dismantle them.
Exactly. The mission for this deep dive is ambitious. We're unpacking an incredibly dense, fascinating landscape of thought regarding identity, reality, and the sometimes terrifying limits of logic itself.
And we're doing this by looking at the foundational philosophical distillations of the Oxford-educated classicist Ben Dupre.
Right. He spent 2 decades breaking down these massive concepts. So we're going to completely deconstruct the very fabric of who you are and what is actually real.
It's quite the landscape to traverse. I mean, the core theme we are really drilling into today is the surprisingly fragile illusion of identity.
It's the illusion of identity,
Yeah, it sounds like a simple concept on the surface, right? How do we know what a thing actually is? And more importantly, how do we know who you are?
Well, you just sort of assume you know.
Exactly. We walk around every day with this profound sense of continuity. You assume that the person who went to sleep last night is the exact same person who woke up this morning.
I certainly hope so.
Right, and you assume the house you live in is the same house you bought 5 years ago. But as we peel back the layers of these fundamental concepts, we find that our everyday assumptions about reality are resting on incredibly shaky, almost paradoxical ground.
And since this is a deep dive, we're completely submerging ourselves in these ideas. We aren't just skimming the surface here. We're going to interrogate the actual mechanics of these philosophies.
So let's do it.
So let's start with the most grounded physical example of an identity crisis we have. We need to look at a highly relatable story about a guy named Theo and an absolute nightmare of a car.
Ah, yes. The infamous story of Honest Joe's car gallery.
That's the one. So Theo buys this car from a dealership called Honest Joe's, which is an incredible ironic name, as we'll see in a minute.
Extremely ironic.
From the moment Theo drives this vehicle off the lot, it is an absolute disaster. It's a total lemon.
Just falling apart immediately.
Exactly. Over the course of 2 years, the car essentially dissolves piece by piece. First, the locks break, so he has to completely replace the locking mechanisms.
Okay.
A few months later, the suspension goes out, completely replaced. Then the clutch totally dies, replaced. Finally, the transmission gives up the ghost, and that's replaced too.
It's just an endless money pit.
It really is. And this goes on and on until basically every single nut, bolt, panel, and wire is swapped out over this 2-year period.
Right, so nothing original is left.
Right. So by the end of it, Theo is standing in his driveway, looking at his vehicle, and he thinks to himself, well, it's a terribly expensive nightmare, but look on the bright side, I essentially have a brand new car.
Which is a fair way to look at it.
It is. But here's the fundamental question. Is the vehicle sitting in his driveway the same car he bought 2 years ago?
And that is exactly where human intuition starts to fracture. Because we try to answer that question from multiple conflicting frameworks simultaneously.
What do you mean by conflicting frameworks?
Well, think about it from a legal standpoint. On the registration, it's the exact same car.
Right.
The VIN number is likely tracked the same way. To the insurance company, it's the same continuous asset.
Yeah, his premiums haven't changed.
Exactly. And from a behavioral standpoint, Theo drives it to the exact same office every day, parks it in the exact same driveway, and experiences it as his singular vehicle.
He calls it my car.
Right. But materially, from the perspective of physics, there isn't a single atom from the original purchase remaining.
Right. He is essentially driving a ghost of the original car. The form is there, but the substance is totally alien.
Precisely. The substance is entirely new. But the dilemma gets infinitely more complicated because of what Honest Joe was doing in the background.
I love this twist. It's so devious.
It really is. Honest Joe, being an unscrupulous hoarding mechanic, didn't just throw Theo's broken parts away. Every time Theo brought the car in for a repair, Joe secretly kept all the original pieces.
Just piling them up in the back?
Yep. He hoarded the old locks, the bad suspension, the busted clutch, the ruined transmission, the original doors. In the back of his shop, he quietly repaired every single broken piece, and over those 2 years, he meticulously reassembled them.
It's like a Frankenstein car.
Exactly like that. So 2 years later, Honest Joe has a perfectly functioning car sitting in his garage made entirely of the original parts that Theo actually paid for on day one.
Wow.
Now, there are two cars in the world. There is the car in Theo's driveway, which has a continuous history of being driven by Theo but contains zero original parts.
Right.
And there is the car in Honest Joe's garage, which has zero continuous history of being driven by Theo but contains 100% of the original physical atoms. Which one is the original car?
It just completely short-circuits my brain. Because intuitively, I want to say Theo's current car, the one he drives to work every day, is his car.
Yep.
That's the one he's bonded with, the one he holds the keys for. But then I think about the car sitting in Honest Joe's garage. That car is literally made of the exact atoms Theo signed a contract for.
It is.
Like if Theo's wife had carved their initials into the dashboard on the day they bought it, that dashboard is currently sitting in Joe's garage. So isn't that the real one?
What you are experiencing right now is the collision of two completely different systems of human categorization. And this is a brilliant, modern filming of a classic philosophical puzzle first formalized by the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes back in 1655.
Though its roots go back way further, right?
Oh, absolutely, back to ancient Greece.
Okay.
It is the paradox of the Ship of Theseus.
Right, the hero Theseus and his famous ship. This is essentially the exact same problem, just with wooden planks instead of a transmission.
Exactly. The ancient story goes that the magnificent ship of the hero Theseus was preserved in an Athenian harbor as a memorial. Over the centuries, as the wooden planks inevitably rotted, the caretakers replaced them one by one with new, sturdy timber.
Just like Theo replacing parts.
Precisely. Eventually, after hundreds of years, not a single piece of the original wood remained. Hobbes took this ancient thought experiment and added the Honest Joe twist.
He added a scavenger to the story.
Yes. He asked, what if someone gathered all the old rotting planks from the harbor water, dried them out, and built a second ship perfectly identical to the first, which is the true Ship of Theseus?
Which exposes the exact same fracture in our logic.
Yes. It exposes that we hold two incredibly strong yet entirely contradictory intuitions about continuity and identity.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
First, we have an instinct for material continuity. This is the idea that a thing is defined strictly by the physical stuff it is made of. The atoms, the wood, the steel.
So the stuff you can touch.
Right. If you believe in material continuity, then Honest Joe's reconstructed car and the ship made of rotting planks are the true originals. Identity lives in the matter.
But our second instinct is for structural or functional continuity.
Exactly. Structural continuity is the idea that a thing is defined by its ongoing form, its functional organization, and its continuous path through space and time.
So it's about the shape and the history, not the atoms.
Yes. By that logic, the car in Theo's driveway and the pristine ship currently floating in the harbor are the originals. The problem is that we casually rely on both of these definitions in our daily lives interchangeably.
Without even realizing it.
Exactly, without realizing they are mutually exclusive until a paradox like this forces them into the same room.
Let me try an analogy here to really test this structural versus material idea. Think of a famous sports team. Let's say it's a legacy basketball team like the Boston Celtics or the Los Angeles Lakers.
Okay, great example.
Over the course of a decade, every single player is traded or retires. The legendary head coach is replaced. The general manager leaves. Even the billionaire owner sells the franchise to a new conglomerate.
So a total turnover.
Total turnover. Furthermore, they demolish their old arena and build a brand new one across town. Is it still the same team?
It's a phenomenal test case. What does your intuition say?
Well, the fans still paint their faces, they still cheer for the jersey, and they still celebrate the championships won 40 years ago as if they belong to the current players on the court.
Right, they feel that deep connection.
But materially, biologically, corporately, and geographically, it is a completely different group of human beings and physical assets. There is literally zero material continuity between the championship team of the 1980s and the team playing today.
Zero. And yet, if you tried to tell a diehard fan that they are cheering for a completely different entity, they would think you were crazy.
Right, because the essence of the team doesn't live in the physical matter. It lives in the human label we assign to its ongoing structural form. It lives in the franchise, the idea of the team.
And this brings us to the uncomfortable truth that philosophy points out. That essence you're talking about. It might just be a convenient fiction.
Fiction.
Well, the label we assign to the sports team, or to Theo's car, or to the Ship of Theseus, is merely a cognitive shorthand. Our brains evolved to navigate a staggeringly complex, ever-changing universe.
So we use labels to simplify things.
Exactly. The universe itself doesn't care about our labels. The universe just consists of matter constantly moving, degrading, and reorganizing through time. We are the ones who are desperate to draw a neat conceptual box around a temporary collection of atoms and declare, this is a single permanent identity.
So we're projecting identity onto things, rather than identity being an actual physical property of the things themselves.
Precisely. If we look closely at the Ship of Theseus, the paradox isn't a problem with the wood, it's a problem with the word ship.
Oh, that's interesting.
We assume ship is a fixed, objective reality, but it's really just a fluid agreement among humans about how to treat a pile of wood that happens to float.
Okay, if we accept that identity is that fragile, and that it relies entirely on fuzzy human labels rather than hard physical reality, it naturally pushes us to the next logical cliff.
Which is?
If a car's identity is questionable after all its parts are replaced, we have to look at the transition itself. At what exact moment did it stop being the original car?
Ah, yes, the boundary problem.
Right. Was it when the clutch was replaced? Was it the transmission? Was it the third screw on the license plate frame? If identity isn't fixed, how do we define the exact boundary of a change?
We can't. And to understand exactly why we can't, we have to interrogate the mechanics of human logic through another ancient puzzle.
The Sorites paradox.
Yes, the Sorites paradox, or the paradox of the heap. This paradox deeply interrogates our definitions of gradients and change.
The paradox of the heap. How does the logic work?
It works by exploiting the very rules of deduction we rely on every day. Imagine you have a massive pile of sand in front of you. Let's say exactly 100,000 grains of sand. I think you and I, and anyone listening, would universally agree that 100,000 grains forms a heap of sand.
Definitely a heap.
Now, we establish a logical premise. Taking away just one single microscopic grain of sand cannot logically destroy a heap.
Okay.
A single grain is too insignificant to change the fundamental categorization of the object. Therefore, if 100,000 grains is a heap, 99,999 grains is also still a heap.
Right. If I blink and the wind blows away one grain, I wouldn't suddenly say the heap is gone. The fundamental nature of the pile remains intact.
Exactly. The logic seems flawless. But if we accept that premise, that removing one grain does not change the status of the heap, we must apply it again. If 99,999 grains is a heap, then taking away another grain leaves 99,998, which must also be a heap. You repeat this logical deduction grain by tiny grain thousands of times.
Just chipping away at it.
Yes. Eventually, you are left with only one single grain of sand sitting on the table. And by the flawless, unbroken application of our initial completely reasonable logic, we are forced to conclude that a single grain of sand is a heap.
Which is completely absurd. A single grain is the exact opposite of a heap.
It is absurd. Conversely, you can run the logic in reverse. If one grain of sand is not a heap, then adding just one single microscopic grain logically shouldn't suddenly magically create a heap.
Right. Adding one grain doesn't change anything.
So 2 grains isn't a heap, 3 isn't. And by that logic, 100,000 grains isn't a heap either. The Sorites paradox demands that we answer an impossible question. Where is the definitive boundary? At what exact mathematically precise number does a non-heap suddenly transform into a heap?
It's maddening, because you can't point to grain number 54,322 and say, aha, that is the magical heap-creating grain.
No, you can't.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There is no magical threshold. It exposes that our words like heap or tall or ball, are fundamentally fuzzy. They don't map perfectly onto physical reality.
And this isn't just an abstract linguistic game either. This fuzzy logic has devastating real-world consequences. We can look at the deeply illustrative example of the fatal logic of the smoker.
This is such a dark, brilliant application of the paradox. So a smoker is perfectly aware of the medical consensus that smoking causes fatal diseases, but they justify their daily habit using the exact mechanics of Sorites logic, usually without even realizing it.
Exactly.
They stand on the porch holding a cigarette and they think to themselves, this one next cigarette won't kill me.
And crucially, strictly speaking from a medical standpoint, they are correct.
Exactly. No single individual cigarette causes terminal lung cancer on its own. A single cigarette is just a tiny, negligible grain of sand. It is not a heap of disease.
Right.
But because the smoker applies this flawless micrologic to every single cigarette they smoke over years and decades, they fall perfectly into the Sorites trap. They entirely ignore the cumulative macro transformation.
They're building a deadly heap of sand, one microscopic grain at a time.
Completely blind to the threshold they are crossing, because no single grain ever feels like the tipping point.
This is where we need to connect this directly to the listener's daily life. How often do you excuse small incremental changes in your habits, your relationships, and your moral environment because just one little difference doesn't redefine who you are?
Oh, all the time. Like, skipping the gym just this one day doesn't make me an out-of-shape person.
Exactly. One instance of snapping at your partner doesn't make you a toxic person. One small, slightly unethical shortcut at work doesn't make you a corrupt employee.
Just one grain of sand.
But just like the grains of sand, at what point does the invisible accumulation of those microactions subtly shift your fundamental identity? Because there is no alarm bell that rings when you cross the boundary from an honest person who made a mistake to a dishonest person.
That is deeply unsettling because we want reality to be binary. We want to be clearly on one side of a line or the other. But the philosophical takeaway here seems to be that our language, our concepts, and our legal and moral definitions are entirely ill-equipped to handle the gradual, messy reality of the physical world.
You've hit the core of the issue. We operate in binary terms, heap or no heap, healthy or unhealthy, original car or new car, innocent or guilty. But the universe does not operate in binaries.
It doesn't care about our lines.
No, the universe operates in spectrums, gradients, and continuous flux. The boundaries we try to aggressively enforce over reality are entirely arbitrary cognitive constructions.
The boundaries are just
Yeah.
in our heads. Okay, so we've completely dismantled the identity of physical objects like cars, conceptual objects like sports teams, and language definitions like sand heaps.
Yes, we have.
Let's dramatically escalate the stakes here to the one thing that actually terrifies us, the human body.
Now we're getting to the heavy stuff.
Because if gradual replacement destroys the identity of a car and cumulative changes destroy the identity of a heap, what does that mean for you? Let's dive into the biological versus the psychological self.
This is where philosophy stops being a puzzle on a chalkboard and becomes deeply, uncomfortably personal. To test the identity of the human self, we must look at the extremes of aging. Consider the contrasts between a 2-year-old toddler and a 90-year-old elderly person.
Okay.
We generally consider them to be the same person at different stages of life.
Right. If it's the same continuous organism, we use the same name. We say, that's William at age 2 and that's William at age 90.
But let's apply the mechanics we just learned. Let's look at the material continuity. On a cellular level, human cells constantly regenerate. The skin, the muscles, the organs, the bones, almost every single atom that made up the toddler's body has been shed, excreted, or replaced over the course of 9 decades.
So they are entirely new matter.
Materially, the 90-year-old is a Ship of Theseus. They are built entirely of different physical matter than the toddler.
So material continuity is completely gone. But what about psychological continuity?
That might be even more fractured. The 90-year-old has entirely different beliefs, fears, vocabularies, coping mechanisms, and desires than the toddler. The toddler operates on pure, raw instinct and immediate sensory feedback.
Just hunger and sleep, basically.
Right. While the 90-year-old possesses a century of complex memories, traumas, wisdom, and learned behaviors, the 90-year-old likely doesn't retain a single authentic, continuous memory of being 2 years old.
That's true. I don't remember being 2.
Exactly. So if they share no physical matter and they share absolutely no psychological traits or memories, we have to ask a brutal question. Are they truly the same person?
Intuitively, I want to scream, yes, it's the same continuous timeline.
Yeah.
But when we actually dissect it, I can't find the thread connecting them. It's just a biological chain reaction that we happen to refer to by a single name.
And the ethical implications of this disconnect are staggering. If the 90-year-old and the 20-year-old version of themselves are barely the same entity, how do we handle the concept of justice?
Oh, this is a terrifying avenue.
Imagine a 90-year-old living in a care facility. They are frail, they have severe dementia, and their daily reality consists of watching television and eating pudding.
Very peaceful.
Suddenly, DNA evidence proves that 70 years ago, when they were a 20-year-old, they committed a terrible violent crime. The justice system demands they be punished. But is it justice to punish this frail 90-year-old for the actions of a 20-year-old they bear zero resemblance to, physically or psychologically?
Wow.
Especially if the dementia means the 90-year-old literally has no memory of the event.
It feels incredibly wrong, because if you put that 90-year-old in a prison cell, the entity experiencing the suffering of that punishment has no conscious connection to the entity that committed the crime. They wouldn't understand why they're there.
Right.
It would be like punishing me for a crime my great-grandfather committed. We are essentially punishing a biological descendant of the criminal simply because they occupy the same continuous timeline.
That is a very precise way to phrase it. And we see this exact same fracture in medical ethics, particularly regarding the concept of a living will.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that. How does the living will fit into this?
Consider a highly independent, vibrant 40-year-old. They value their autonomy above all else. They write a legally binding living will that explicitly states, if I ever lose my mental faculties, if I can no longer read or engage in complex conversation, I do not want life-saving interventions. Let me die. I refuse to live in a diminished state.
A very common and understandable document. Many people have those.
Fast forward 50 years, that person is now 90. They have advanced dementia. They cannot read. They cannot hold complex conversations. But surprisingly, they are incredibly happy.
Oh, I see where this is going.
They are peaceful in their care facility. They love watching the birds outside their window, and they smile at the nurses every day. Suddenly, they contract a very easily treatable infection, say pneumonia. Antibiotics would cure them in a week, but the doctor looks at the chart and sees the living will written 50 years ago.
Oh my God.
The living will demands no life-saving interventions. So should the doctor let this happy, peaceful, elderly patient die purely based on a legal document written by their completely different, highly aggressive 40-year-old self?
That's agonizing.
Does the 40-year-old have the moral right to dictate the life and death of the 90-year-old when the 90-year-old currently seems to value their simple existence?
It is an absolute moral minefield. Because if they are not the same person, then the 40-year-old essentially signed a death warrant for a stranger. But if they are the same person, then ignoring the living will is a massive violation of their bodily autonomy.
Exactly. To navigate these impossible ethical dilemmas, philosophy forces us to isolate exactly what we value in identity. What is the core ingredient? To find it, we have to look at a radical, hypothetical thought experiment, the brain transplant.
Okay, let's go full science fiction. Walk me through the mechanics of the brain transplant.
Imagine medical science advances to the point of perfect surgical precision. You and I go into a hospital. Your brain is surgically removed from your skull. My brain is removed from my skull. And then they are swapped.
Just traded completely.
Yes. Your physical brain is placed into my physical body, connected perfectly to my spinal cord and nervous system. When the anesthesia wears off and the patient wakes up, whose identity has survived in that body, who is looking out of those eyes?
Well, intuition screams instantly that I survived.
Yeah.
I am looking out of those eyes.
Really? Even in my body?
Yeah, but I just got a massive hardware change. Like I would wake up, lift my hands, look at them and think, whoa, I am in a completely different body. I'm taller, my voice sounds weird, I have different fingerprints. But I wouldn't wake up thinking I was you with some bizarre new memories planted in my head. I would just feel like me trapped inside you.
And that immediate screaming intuition of yours completely destroys the strictly biological or animal definition of humanity.
How so?
Because if human identity was fundamentally tied to our physical bodies, our meat, our bones, our heart, then the person waking up in my body would inherently be me. The body is me.
Right.
But you don't believe that. Nobody believes that. The brain transplant intuition proves that we instinctively believe our identity is not our physical meat.
Right. The physical body is just a vessel.
We fundamentally believe that our identity is our software, our experiences, our memories, our beliefs, our unique consciousness. The body is nothing more than the biological hardware, the meat suit that exists solely to carry the software around. Your software simply got installed on my hardware.
We are the software. Okay, I accept that premise. But if we agree that identity is just this invisible software running in the physical brain, we have a massive new problem.
What's that?
How do we track software over time? Because unlike physical objects, software can be copied, deleted, rewritten, or corrupted.
This is exactly the problem that the great 17th century philosopher John Locke recognized. He saw that physical continuity was a dead end, so he formalized a concept to track the software. He called it psychological continuity.
Let's unpack Locke's mechanics. How does psychological continuity actually work?
Locke argued that personal identity is not found in the material substance of the brain or the physical body. It is found strictly in consciousness itself. He described personal identity as a continuous, overlapping rope of memories linking the past to the present.
An overlapping rope. I like that image.
You are you today because you remember being you yesterday. And yesterday you remember being the day before you, and so on, all the way back in an unbroken chain of conscious experience. The memories are the fibers that weave the rope of identity.
A rope of memories. It's an elegant solution. It solves the 90-year-old prisoner problem because if the memory chain is broken by dementia, the identity is broken, and they are literally a different person. But ropes can be cut. Ropes can be spliced. Which brings us to the absolute ultimate test of Locke's theory. I want to talk about the Star Trek teleporter.
Ah, this thought experiment is the crucible for psychological continuity. Let's set the parameters.
Okay, picture this. It's the distant future. You need to travel from Earth to the moon. You step into a teleporter capsule on Earth. The machine activates, and it scans you down to the exact quantum state of every single atom in your entire body.
Right down to the subatomic level.
Yep. It maps every neural pathway, every memory, every single firing synapse. It records all of your hardware and all of your software perfectly.
A flawless, lossless scan of your entire state of being.
Exactly. Then, the crucial step, the machine on Earth vaporizes your body.
Wow.
It completely destroys the original physical you. Yeah, poof, gone. It then beams the digital data to a receiving station on the moon. The moon machine uses local lunar carbon, lunar water, and lunar minerals to build an exact atom-for-atom replica of you based on the scan. The door hizzes open on the moon, and a person steps out. Now, is the person standing on the moon you? According to John Locke's mechanics of psychological continuity, the answer has to be a resounding yes, right?
Under Locke's strict definition, absolutely. The psychological continuity is perfectly maintained. The person stepping out on the moon has every single memory you had before you stepped in. They remember the flash of the scanner. They have your exact fears, your exact sense of humor, your exact love for your family.
So the software transferred completely.
Yes. The software was perfectly transferred without a single skipped frame. Therefore, identity is maintained.
Okay, that seems to work. But I know there's a trap coming.
The trap is what happens when we introduce a mechanical glitch. Imagine the exact same scenario. You step into the scanner on Earth, the machine scans you perfectly. It beams the data to the moon. The moon machine perfectly constructs the replica. The door on the moon opens, and a person steps out, looks at the lunar landscape, and says, wow, the teleporter worked perfectly.
Right.
But the Earth machine malfunctions. It scans you, but the vaporizing mechanism jams. It completely fails to destroy your original body.
Oh, no.
The door on the Earth machine pops open, and you step out, slightly confused, looking at the technician, and you ask, did it work? Am I still on Earth?
Oh, this is a nightmare.
Now look at the board. There is a you standing on Earth, and there is a you standing on the moon. Both biological entities have perfectly continuous psychological software. Both have the exact same unbroken rope of memories leading right up to the moment the scanner flashed. Both feel exactly 100% like the original. Who is the real you?
Okay, let me stubbornly push back here. Intuitively, my gut screams that the one on Earth is the real me.
Why is that?
It has to be. The Earth one wasn't vaporized, it just stood in a scanner. The Earth one is the original, and the Moon one is just a remarkably convincing copy, a biological clone.
Hmm?
The one on Earth has the unbroken physical continuity.
Uh-huh. But do you realize what you just did?
What? What did I do?
If we claim that the Earth version is the real you, purely because it has physical continuity, we are falling into a massive philosophical trap. We are totally contradicting the conclusion we just reached 5 minutes ago.
Wait, how am I contradicting myself?
Because by saying the Earth one is the real one, you are suddenly claiming that the original biological meat does matter.
Oh.
You are saying that being made of the original physical atoms is the ultimate deciding factor of identity. But in the brain transplant experiment, we vehemently agreed that the meat didn't matter at all. We decided that only the software mattered.
Right. I said the body was just a meat suit.
Exactly. And if only the software matters, then both the Earth person and the Moon person have an absolutely equal claim to being you because their software is functionally identical. You cannot logically use Locke's psychological continuity to validate the normal working teleporter, but then suddenly abandon Locke and run back to physical continuity the second the teleporter glitches. The logic must hold in all scenarios.
Wow. My brain is in a complete knot. Because if the Earth me says, I am the real one, the Moon me can look at a monitor, point at the Earth me, and say, no, I am the real one. You are just the obsolete hardware that was supposed to be deleted.
And they would both be completely justified in their own minds.
So how do we resolve this absolute nightmare of logic? What does philosophy do when Locke breaks down?
The resolution offered in advanced philosophy is incredibly radical, and it requires abandoning a fundamental, almost sacred assumption about how we view ourselves. The entire teleporter confusion only exists because we insist on thinking of the self or the ego as a concrete, singular thing.
What do you mean by a singular thing?
We intuitively picture the self like a glowing, indivisible orb of light sitting inside our heads, acting as the pilot of the body, moving smoothly from moment to moment. We assume there's a strict mathematical rule that there can only be one me in the universe at any given time.
Right, I'm just one person.
But if we stop thinking of the self as a singular, concrete object, the paradox actually resolves itself quite elegantly.
Okay, I am trying to let go of the glowing orb. If the self isn't a singular object, what exactly is happening to me when the teleporter glitches? Where do I go?
The radical view suggests that you simply survive in both new individuals. The moment the scanner flashes and the glitch happens, your psychological timeline doesn't break, it branches.
Like a tree branch.
Or think of it like a river splitting around a massive rock and forming two new streams. Both the Earth person and the Moon person have your memories up to the exact point of the scan. From that millisecond forward, their experiences diverge. The Moon person will form memories of low gravity. The Earth person will form memories of yelling at the technician.
So I survive as two people.
Yes. You have achieved an incredible, miraculous form of survival. You are now experiencing two completely independent lives simultaneously. But, and this is the terrifying cost, you achieved this survival at the cost of your singular personal identity.
There's no longer one me.
There is no longer one you. The singular identity you cherished has multiplied. The question, which one is the real you, is the wrong question. They are both continuations of the pattern that used to be you.
That is beautiful, but it is deeply terrifying. It feels like we are completely obsessed with searching for this singular ghost inside the machine of our bodies, and the second a thought experiment splits the machine, we panic because we can't find the ghost anymore.
That phrase you just used, the ghost in the machine, is the absolute perfect segue, because it addresses exactly why our intuition fails us so spectacularly when we try to find a singular self in the teleporter glitch or a singular ship in the rotting planks.
Why does it fail?
Our intuition fails because we're looking for something in the wrong logical category entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of the category mistake. We are searching for a ghost, but we are looking in the wrong place.
Precisely. To explain this, we turn to the brilliant 20th century philosopher Gilbert Ryle. In his seminal 1949 work, The Concept of Mind, Ryle aggressively argued that looking for a singular self or mind that exists as an object separate from the operations of the body is what he coined a category mistake.
A category mistake. Let's ground this. Ryle has a famous analogy to illustrate this error, but I want to try updating it.
Let's hear it.
Let's say I take someone from the 1800s, and I show them a modern smartphone. I pull off the back cover, and I show them the lithium-ion battery. I show them the microchips, the logic board, the tiny camera lens, the glass screen, and the antenna. I explain what all these physical parts do.
Okay, so they see all the components.
Right. And at the end of the explanation, the person looks at me, totally confused, and asks, well, I see the glass, and I see the battery, and I see the chips, but where's the internet?
That is a phenomenal modern adaptation. What is the fundamental error the person from the 1800s is making in that scenario?
They're making a category mistake. They think the internet is another physical component. They expect me to point to a tiny, glowing blue square inside the phone and say, ah, that piece right there is the internet.
Yes.
They don't understand that the internet isn't a physical object inside the phone. The internet is the network, the invisible organization and communication of all those components interacting with the rest of the world.
Exactly. The internet exists in a completely different logical category than the microchip. The microchip is a physical object. The internet is an organization, a system, a pattern of behavior. Now, let's apply this exact same logic to the human mind. This is Ryle's direct attack on René Descartes and his famous concept of mind-body dualism from 1637.
Right. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Descartes famously argued that the mind is a non-physical substance, completely separate from the mechanical body. The body is matter, the mind is spirit.
Yes. Descartes believed the mind was literally a ghost haunting the biological machine of the body. But Ryle argues that Descartes, and by extension almost all of us, are making the exact same error as your time traveler looking for the internet inside the phone.
We're looking for the blue glowing square.
Exactly. When neuroscientists look at a human being, they see the physical brain firing electrical synapses. They see the nervous system reacting to heat and cold. They see memories being chemically encoded in the hippocampus. They observe behavioral responses to stimuli. If you look at all of that biology and ask, okay, I see the neurons and I see the behavior, but where is the self? You are making a category mistake.
Because I'm looking for a physical glowing orb.
Exactly. The self isn't a separate, invisible object sitting inside the control room of the brain. The self is the collective organization of your thoughts, your biology, and your actions. Just like there is no physical piece of the phone called the internet, there is no physical object inside you called the self. The self is merely a pattern.
Man. And when you realize the self is just a pattern of organization, the Star Trek teleporter glitch makes total logical sense.
It does.
The teleporter didn't copy a magical glowing orb, it just copied a pattern of information. And a pattern can easily exist in two places at once. Just like the same digital song can play on two different cell phones simultaneously, the pattern of me can play on the Earth body and the Moon body simultaneously.
Correct. The paradox dissolves when you fix the category mistake.
Okay, but fixing that mistake opens up a terrifying new door. Because if myself is just an organizational concept, a fleeting pattern, and my physical identity is just a fluid illusion like the Ship of Theseus,
Yeah.
can I trust anything?
It gets tricky.
Can I trust the physical reality I am currently observing at all? Because if I'm not a concrete localized thing, maybe the world around me isn't a concrete thing either.
You are sliding right into the ultimate epistemological nightmare. We are moving from questioning who we are to questioning where we are. This is the realm of radical skepticism, and it pushes us right to the absolute edge of what human logic can process.
Let's dive right over that edge. Because we have to talk about the modern sci-fi upgrade to Descartes' old evil demon thought experiment. In 1981, philosophy got a concept so terrifying it essentially inspired the movie The Matrix. Let's unpack the mechanics of the brain in a vat thought experiment.
It is the ultimate challenge to human knowledge. Set the stage.
So the premise is this. What if, right now, as you, the listener, are engaging with this deep dive, you don't actually have a physical body? You think you are sitting in a chair or driving a car or walking a dog. But what if you are actually just a disembodied human brain floating in a vat of warm, pink nutrient fluid in some sterile high-tech laboratory?
A horrifying but logically sound premise.
It gets worse. A group of super scientists, or maybe a hyper-intelligent AI supercomputer, has wired millions of microscopic electrodes into every single nerve ending of your floating brain.
Feeding it data.
Right. They're perfectly feeding your brain highly complex electrical signals that simulate reality. The feeling of the chair beneath you, just a burst of electricity to the somatosensory cortex. The sound of my voice right now. Just electrical impulses fed into your auditory cortex.
Your entire reality is fabricated.
Everything. The memory of your breakfast this morning, artificial data written directly into your hippocampus. Everything you are experiencing is just code fed into a jar. Here is the impossible question. How could you possibly definitively prove that you are not a brain in a vat right now?
It is the ultimate impenetrable skeptical challenge. Because any test you try to perform to prove that your reality is real is instantly corrupted.
Right. If I say, I'll just pinch my arm to see if I'm awake, the feeling of the pinch is just another simulated electrical input fed into the brain by the computer.
Exactly.
If I call a friend to ask them if we're in a simulation, the friend's voice is just a simulated audio file. You are completely trapped within the simulation's parameters. There is no way to reach outside the system to measure the system.
So, are we hopelessly stuck? Do we just have to admit that we might all be sensory soup brains?
Well, philosophers hate being stuck, so they tried to find a way out. And there is a fascinating attempt by the philosopher Hilary Putnam to defeat the brain in a vat experiment. But he doesn't use physics or neuroscience to defeat it. He uses, of all things, linguistics.
Yes, Putnam's semantic externalism. It is a brilliant, though highly debated, maneuver.
Okay, let's unpack this semantic victory. How on earth does Putnam fight the matrix using grammar?
To understand Putnam's defense, you have to understand his causal theory of meaning. Putnam argued that the words we use only have actual meaning if they have a direct causal connection to the real things they refer to in the physical world. Let me give you an analogy.
Sure.
Imagine a person who has been completely blind since birth. They have never seen color, but they read a lot of poetry, and they learn to use the word red to describe anger or heat or passion. However, they have never had a causal visual interaction with a red apple or a red stop sign. When they say the word red, the mechanics of their meaning are fundamentally different than when a sighted person says the word red.
Because the sighted person's word is physically tethered to the real-world light frequency of red, while the blind person's word is only tethered to abstract concepts.
Exactly. Now let's aggressively apply this causal theory of meaning to the brain in a vat. Imagine that vat brain. That brain has never, ever seen a real physical tree. It has never touched real bark. It has only ever experienced the simulated electrical impulse of a tree programmed by the computer.
It only knows the code for a tree.
Yes. Therefore, when the vat brain thinks the word tree, it's not actually referring to a real biological tree in the real world. Its word tree causally refers to simulated tree impulse.
Okay, I am tracking the mechanics of this.
Now, apply this exact same linguistic tethering to the concept of the vat itself. The vat brain has never interacted with real vats, real glass, real nutrient fluid, or real brains in the physical world. So if the vat brain attempts to form the thought, I am a brain in a vat, the words brain and vat in its internal vocabulary actually mean simulated brain and simulated vat.
Ah, I see where this logic trap is snapping shut.
Yes. Therefore, what the vat brain is actually asserting when it thinks that sentence is, I am a simulated brain in a simulated vat. But it isn't. It is a real physical brain floating in a real physical vat of fluid. Thus, Putnam argues with absolute logical certainty, a true brain in a vat could never actually express the true meaningful thought, I am a brain in a vat.
Oh.
The very act of thinking it meaningfully proves that you are not one. The sentence is self-defeating.
Okay. I followed the logic all the way down the rabbit hole. I see that semantic trap Putnam built. But I have to push back hard here because this feels like an incredibly hollow, almost cowardly victory.
Many people feel that way.
It's a linguistic sleight of hand. Like, congratulations, Putnam. You successfully proved that the vat brain can't correctly use the dictionary definition of the word vat. But that doesn't change the terrifying physical reality that the brain is still trapped in the jar.
It is a totally hollow victory.
Right. It doesn't actually help us physically know reality. It doesn't free us from the jar. It just proves that human language is weird and fundamentally disconnected from objective truth.
You've had the exact critique that philosophers level against Putnam. It highlights the severe flaws of language itself. We are trying to use human language, a rudimentary tool evolved by apes on the savannah, to point at fruit and warn each other about approaching tigers, to decode the fundamental quantum structure of reality.
It's just the wrong tool for the job.
Exactly. It is the wrong tool for the job.
And this connects perfectly to another famous linguistic puzzle that proves exactly how easily our language breaks down when it encounters logic. It's Bertrand Russell's famous puzzle about the King of France. Let's unpack the mechanics of this one because it's so frustratingly brilliant.
Ah, yes. The present King of France is bald. Walk us through the trap.
Okay, so logically, we all know that France is a republic. There currently is no King of France. So if I walk up to you and say the sentence, the present King of France is bald, is that statement true or false? Well, obviously it's false, because there is no king for the baldness to attach to.
But here is where classical logic forces us into a corner. Classical logic operates on a foundational pillar called the law of excluded middle.
Right, what does that mean?
This absolute law states that for any proposition, either that proposition is strictly true or its exact opposite is strictly true. There is no middle ground, no gray area.
Exactly. So if the statement, the present King of France is bald, is false, then according to the ironclad laws of classical logic, the exact opposite statement must be true. The opposite statement is, the present King of France is not bald. But wait, if I assert that he is not bald, that structurally implies that he has hair.
Which implies that he exists.
Which is also entirely false. So both the statement and its direct opposite are false. Our simple, everyday language just completely violated the foundational law of logic.
This is exactly why Bertrand Russell had to invent complex mathematical logical notations just to solve it. He pointed out that our everyday language constantly smuggles in hidden, unverified assumptions. In this case, the assumption of existence. The grammar of the sentence assumes the subject exists before it even evaluates the adjective.
We are smuggling assumptions. And if we pull the lens back and connect this to the entire journey we've been on, it brings us right back to Theo's car, the grains of sand, and the teleporter. Just like our rudimentary language fails to accurately describe the non-existent King of France without breaking logic, maybe our language simply isn't evolved enough to describe what happens to identity during a teleporter glitch, or at what exact microsecond a car becomes a completely new car.
Exactly. The paradoxes might not actually exist in the physical reality of the universe. The paradoxes might only exist in the severe limitations of our grammar. We are trying to measure the infinite complexities of the cosmos with a crooked, rudimentary ruler.
A crooked ruler. That's a great way to put it.
We arrogantly assume our intuition and our language are perfect mirrors of reality, but they are incredibly distorted funhouse mirrors.
It's all about our desperate need to organize chaos. And there's one final area where our intuition massively oversimplifies complex reality. It's the teleological argument, also known as the design argument.
Yes, this
Yeah.
ties everything we've discussed, from cars to brains to words, together beautifully. The teleological argument is the classic philosophical assertion regarding the complexity of nature. It argues that if you look at the incredibly complex functional organization of biological parts, the most famous historical example being the human eye, you must intuitively assume a singular purpose. You must assume a top-down creator or a master designer. The eye, with its lens, retina, and optic nerve, appears far too perfectly organized to be a mere accident of matter.
And obviously, modern evolutionary biology provides a slow, mechanistic, bottom-up explanation for how the eye formed gradually over millions of years without requiring a top-down designer. It's a Sorite's paradox of biology, one tiny, advantageous mutation at a time, building a heap of complexity. But there's a profound philosophical connection here regarding how we view ourselves.
Yes, the connection is about pattern recognition. Our deeply ingrained natural instinct to look at the complex biological machinery of the eye and immediately assume a singular, unified designer is the exact same instinct that makes us look at the complex neurological machinery of our own brain and assume a singular, unified self.
Wow, we're just desperate for a top-down explanation.
Exactly. We are, at our core, pattern-seeking creatures. When we see a highly organized, functioning system, whether it's the biological marvel of an eye, the sprawling institution of a university, the coordinated movements of a sports team, or the stream of consciousness we call a mind, we desperately want to assign a single unified label to it.
We want it to be simple.
We want a creator for the eye, we want a single university building for Oxford, we want a true ship for Theseus, and we want an indivisible, glowing soul for the body. We want reality to be neat, singular, and easily definable.
But philosophy, as Ben Dupree masterfully lays out in these concepts, constantly challenges us to look closer, to break out of the illusion of the macro label and see the micro reality, to see that the pattern of the self or the ship is actually an illusion created by the continuous interaction of countless, constantly changing smaller parts.
Okay, we need to take a breath and synthesize this massive journey we just went on.
We covered an absolutely staggering amount of ground today. We started with a broken-down car sitting at Honest Joe's dealership, wrestling with the ancient Ship of Theseus. We debated whether the true identity of an object lives in its material atoms or in the human label we assign to its structural form.
From there, we watched a single microscopic grain of sand completely destroy our logical definitions of change through the Sorite's paradox, exposing the dangerous, fuzzy boundaries of human language and the fatal logic of gradients.
We then turned that unforgiving lens on our own biology, questioning if a 90-year-old prisoner is actually the same person as a toddler, and determining through the brain transplant thought experiment that our true identity isn't our biological hardware, but rather the psychological software running in our minds.
We then pushed that software theory to its absolute logical breaking point with John Locke's rope of memories and the glitching Star Trek teleporter.
That one really broke me.
It breaks everyone. We realized that to survive the glitch, we had to abandon the ego and accept Gilbert Ryle's argument that searching for a singular, concrete self is a fundamental category mistake. We're fluid organizations, not solid objects.
And finally, we plummeted into the existential terror of the brain in a vat, realizing that our attempts to prove the reality around us or even describe it with words are constantly hampered by the severe limitations, hidden assumptions, and semantic traps of our own human language.
So after completely dismantling reality, the listener might be asking, why should you care? Why does any of this intensely abstract thought matter when you're just trying to get through your morning commute, answer emails, or fold your laundry?
Exactly. What is the practical application of breaking our brains like this?
It matters deeply because while philosophy might seem abstract, like debating moon clones, vats of fluid, and bald French kings, these foundational concepts dictate the very structure of our everyday reality. They dictate our laws and our justice system, directly determining if a 90-year-old is morally culpable for a crime committed in a different era by a different body.
It's life and death.
They dictate our medical ethics, deciding when bodily autonomy begins and ends, and who has the right to refuse treatment.
They are the hidden rules running the simulation of society.
Precisely. But most intimately, understanding these concepts dictates how we judge our own personal growth over time. If you can truly understand that your identity is not a fixed concrete object, that you are not a trapped, immutable, glowing orb, but rather a fluid, changing organization of experiences, it allows for profound grace.
How so?
You are not rigidly bound to be the person you were 10 years ago, any more than Theo is bound to the broken transmission of his original car. The atoms have changed, the software has updated. You are a continuous process of becoming.
You are a process. I absolutely love that framing. And to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. Something building on our deep dive into biology earlier, human cells constantly regenerate.
They do.
The physical brain, currently processing the meaning of these words, the physical eardrums vibrating to the sound of our voices, the physical structures you used to start listening to this deep dive an hour ago have already begun replacing themselves at a microscopic level.
Yeah.
Millions of your cells have literally died, and millions more have been born since I first said the word welcome.
It's constantly happening.
Materially, biologically, you are already a slightly different person than you were when you hit play. So if the you from an hour ago is already fading away into the physical past, who exactly is going to carry these thoughts forward into tomorrow?
That is the question.
Don't forget to follow us and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes and never miss a step in this odyssey of thought. Until next time, keep questioning.